Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Many of you may know that my passion is travel, and particularly traveling by sea. I love to go on cruises. The first cruise that I ever went on was the Pacific Dawn, a now medium-sized ship which sails out of Brisbane. It's a venerable ship. It's a few years old now, but I quite loved it. And it is still sailing out of Brisbane. Well, today it's not sailing out of Brisbane. Today it's sailing back from New Caledonia, having been called aside from taking its passengers to places like Noumea and Port Vila, and it's instead coming home after having picked up 3 sailors whose yacht was sinking and who were clinging to a windswept, watery lifeboat. So this giant cruise ship with 1,700 passengers and 1,000 crew diverted from its floating around as a giant hotel and became a saviour to those 3 lost sailors. I have to say, I was so heartwarmed when I saw that story come across my wire service this morning preparing for our lunchtime bulletin, because I love to travel. It is my passion. I'm not the only one that loves to travel, and I love to travel and find new things. There are lots of people who have done that. One of them is Leif Erikson. Now, most people, when they think of North America and the discovery by Europeans, think that Columbus was the first European to find North America. In fact, he didn't. He only found Central America, but that's not even the point. In fact, Leif Erikson found North America 1,000 years almost before, actually that's 600 years before Columbus did. What happened was that Leif the Lucky, and I use the name Leif the Lucky because that's as he was known, and I don't mean lucky in the sense that we mean. I mean lucky in the sense that he was favoured by the gods with skills like navigation and leadership and fighting and the like. Now, they're all skills that require a lot of hard work, ladies and gentlemen. So maybe it is lucky in the sense that it's attributed to Thomas Jefferson, who once said, or is quoted as saying, "I'm a great believer in luck, and the harder I work, the more luck I get." Well, Erikson had an awful lot of that sort of luck. He was the son of another Viking leader, Eric the Red. And according to the Icelandic sagas, he established a settlement at Vinland. Now, that's somewhere on the North American coast, probably in what is now Newfoundland. That means that he beat Columbus to the Americas by 500 years. But apart from a few ruins, there's actually no sign of his epic achievement there anymore. So how did he make his way across the frigid North Atlantic to modern-day Canada? Well, again, luck comes into play. Leif's vessel at one stage was blown off course to near Scotland, and when his men finally reached Norway, the tales of his daring do put him in good stead with the king, who made him a member of the royal court and converted him to Christianity. Now, Leif's father, Eric the Red, had set up a colony in Greenland. That's a deliberate misnomer, by the way. There's very little green about Greenland, but he thought that a catchy name might help to attract more settlers, so marketing even back in those days. But anyway, Leif was sent to try and convert those settlers in Greenland. But again, he got caught in a storm and got blown across to the North American continent. And this is where the harder I work, the luckier I get comes into play. There was another Viking, a guy called Bjarni Herjolfsson, who'd previously spotted these lush green lands of Newfoundland. But he didn't land because that wasn't his job. No, instead he went back to his own waters and said, "I saw this land over there, but I didn't bother landing." Well, no, Leif said, no, I'm going to go and check this out. He gave it a red-hot go and headed back there with about 35 men, landing first at Baffin Island and then Labrador before he finally set up to winter at a place he called Vinland because of all of the vines that were growing there. Well, the Vikings, I have to tell you, were a fairly argumentative lot. They spent a lot of time squabbling. In fact, so much time squabbling and so little time settling that somewhere around 1020 they just decided, forget it, we're going home now. And it's from that point that Leif the Lucky disappears from the history books. But he really created a splash. He used his passion to explore to create the power of a new place for his people. A few years later, well, let's say a lot of years later, Magellan was the first man to make his way around the world. We all know that, right? Well, actually, that's not true. Magellan never made it around the world. In fact, Magellan died before he got around the world. He was killed in the Philippines. And it's quite possible that a slave boy may, in fact, have been the world's first trans-global traveller. Sometime before 1511, a young slave was brought from Spain to Spain at least, from his home near Sumatra. And he then became a slave to Magellan, who probably renamed him Enrique and took him on this epic journey around the world. When Magellan died in the Philippines, the Spaniards were supposed to release this youngster because, you know, he served Magellan really well. And they said, no, you're too good a pilot. You're too good. You're too useful to us. You're going to stick with us. Well, he then promptly engineered a fight between the Filipino tribesmen and the Spaniards, and during that fight, took off. Now, given that he'd come from Sumatra, which is really in the great scheme of things only a hop, skip and jump away from the Philippines, he probably made his way back to Indonesia fairly quickly, which means that he would have got back to his home where he first began months before Magellan's crew finally made their way back to Europe. And so, as I say, this slave boy, about whom we know nothing other than his name and that he had come from Sumatra, was probably the first man to go around the world. Now you understand why I have a passion for travel, ladies and gentlemen, because everywhere I go, everywhere I stop, I find these fascinating stories about conflicts and about power and about people working together. And every time, they're fascinating. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for me, travel, particularly travel at sea, is both my passion and my power. Mr. Toastmaster.